Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this week I'm delighted to be joined by Steve-O and Paddy Boy from Celtic World Order. Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind, Paddy and Steve-O from Celtic World Order. This is becoming something of a habit, but when you've had such a dramatic 7 days, we need to talk about it, guys. We've not really done a deep dive on ACSOM into who's going to take over. So I think we need to look at that. We need to look at the situation, and we need to look into the future. So straight off the bat, I'm going to ask you your reaction, Paddy, to last Monday night. It was a bit of a shocker, wasn't it?
Yeah, listen, I was at darts. I was playing darts against
Chucking arrows.
Chucking arrows, mate. I was just come off the board. One of the guys comes over with the phone. He's like, "Brendan's gone." A couple of hours before that, I was showing him a thing saying that Brendan had agreed terms to the end of January. It was all seen. It was like, "Oh, I was like, right, that's okay, that's cool." And then when he come over with the things him Brendan had walked, I blown away, mate. Absolutely blown away. And like, it was a mixed company. So obviously you can imagine the other side of Glasgow were quite excited by this and saying that he'd run away for Danny Rowe and he'd run away for Tony Bloom and all of the others. But mate, just carnage. And then to find out that Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney were taking over, I thought when we turned the clocks back, it was an hour, not 20 years. I was a wee bit kind of flabbergasted, I'll say. Just blew me away, just completely shocked.
It was shocking. It took me a couple of days for it to settle, Steve-O. I mean, I loved Martin O'Neill. I loved that era. We all did, right? But like you say, it was a proper step back in time. We'll start off with Brendan Rodgers, though. We knew there was issues. We knew it was fractured.
Of course, yeah.
I had no idea it was that fractured.
It's tough to tell. As Paddy said, I was the exact same. Late at night, I think it was 9:45, wasn't it? And then the quick statement followed up, the infamous Dermot Desmond one. Now that follows up 15 minutes or so after it. Yeah, really surprising. I've got various theories and we explored it. I think when you really split the two, could you say the writing was on the wall for Brendan Rodgers? Quite possibly. From a results-driven standpoint, you need to split that. Yes, he's been sold a dumb hand, one arm behind your back, but you will be made and broke on your results, and it just wasn't going that way. So, it was strange. And when I got the news and I had a look at it, I had various theories on it. Partly, I think, is he's probably, in my opinion, based on nothing, I think he's been sat down. They said there was a conversation on Monday, but I think the conversations probably went along the lines of, we're under pressure here. You have to beat Rangers or your jaws are done. And I think probably self-preservation, is that right? Watch this. And handed in his resignation. Now, when you see the two statements, I think it's clear there's contradictory, but I think they both contradict each other. I don't believe some of the things that Brendan Rodgers has claimed, and I also certainly don't believe in things that Dermot Desmond has claimed. For example, we never had a conversation about his conversation. Come on. Try to tell me that didn't happen, Brendan. And equally, you're trying to tell me you were never told by the manager that I'm unhappy with the signing policy. There's somewhere, their side, the truth somewhere in the middle. I think it's an unfortunate way that it came out in the public, quite ugly. But I think that ultimately it was a decision that would have had to have been made at some stage. So take it as you find it.
When you look at the recruitment, because that's been the biggest talking point, right? And when you look at the recruitment, do you think, as much of a fan of Brendan Rodgers as I was, do you think there was too much drama created by a lot of what he was saying about, club signings, simply refusing to play players? Because you look at that and you think, well, they might have contributed last season, the season before, this season, they may have. Nawrocki might have contributed.
Yeah.
We don't know. And then you look at what's happened this week, and Osmond is kind of proving the point that give somebody a game, give them a bit of belief, and they'll give you a result. How much of the issues did we have around recruitment were a stubborn, inflexible manager, do you think, Paddy?
Listen, we've said it before, Brendan Rodgers has been known to be quite egotistical at some times. An egotistical maniac, some folk have said. But when you come around and you look at it, we spoke about Lagerbielka, a guy who'd come back and absolutely schooled us. We've seen that with previous players as well, but you can look at guys that's come in and look at Sunday there. Johnny Kenny, brilliant. Osmond, brilliant. I mean, even Arnie Engels, who, again, trusted, brilliant. Yep. These kind of guys who weren't getting a sniff, like Rio Hatate. I'm Rio Hatate's biggest advocate. I thought the guy was brilliant, but...
All right, mate.
He's been horrible. He's been absolutely horrible the last wee while. And changing it and bringing in Engels, what a boost.
I know.
Yeah.
Arne Engels has been incredible, and that pains me to say that because I was one of these guys who was on his back constant. And listen, it's brilliant. It's good to see. Johnny Kenny, Johnny Larson. That's what I'm saying, mate. Honestly, brilliant. The guy's been incredible. We Callum Osmond, I was nearly greeting watching his interview, the best day of his life. Where were these guys? Why were they not getting the chance? You've got Iheanacho up front, right? Iheanacho, that's what it is. He was doing well. He scored a few goals and whatever, but Johnny Kenny brings a total different game.
Energy.
Aye.
Aye.
It's energy, positivity. Everything had got a bit stale. And when that happens, sometimes you need to introduce new faces. But you've annoyed all the new faces like Simpson Pusey, Shin Yamada.
Again,
These guys, I know.
It comes back to the conversation that we had previously as well when I spoke about it. The way that he was talking in the press stuff, yeah, he was right to be saying I need more. But my biggest concern was wind the clocks back to his first time back, second stint, and he got a squad playing well, and then he kept forcing, I need better, I need more quality, and it eroded the faith that he had in the squad that was there. We then went through that dip and we fortunately were able to pull out the fire and got on, and the rest is history. But it just felt, I genuinely believe that maybe his comments, maybe the omissions, maybe this club signing versus my signing type thing, it probably created a divide, eroded faith in some of the players. And I'm not one who goes far as to say downed tools, but it definitely affected them. You know, look at, as you've just said, the transformation in Arne Engels, the transformation in Johnny Kenny, what you saw from Osmond, Trusty getting brought in out the cold, opting for Sriracha over Kieran Tierney.
Yeah.
You know, I said to you, if we played that final and Brendan Rodgers was still in place, Kieran Tierney would have started, Dane Murray would have started, Rio Hatate would have started. You know where it's going, and it would have given the same result.
Bland, stale. Dyson Maida. We've got Dyson back.
Serpico.
We've got him back. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the hair.
Steve would called it. We went on a pre-match as well, and Steve would said if we play Tony Ralston, we're going to need to have Dyson Maida on the right because Dyson will help him. Dyson will cover.
But
push back.
talking about what you said about the splits and the potential, you know, attitude, I think there was a split in the dressing room, and I get asked, do you think so? I says, well, base it on how Dyson Maida plays.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you start as a fan looking back and going, what players have we lost? Awata. I always like to look at Awata. Kyogo. We maybe lost Kyogo where we could have kept him and he could have still been the Kyogo we knew under Ange. Brendan has gone. Season 3 again. And we now look at what happens next. Sean Maloney, when he was given the position as the pathway manager, it raised a few eyebrows because of what he had done in the game, who he had worked with, what level he had worked at, not just Hibs and Wigan. I'm talking about his time, obviously, with Martinez as well. And he's been given this position, which is pretty low in the great scheme of things and the rung of the ladders. I was just talking the week previous before Rodgers walked or was sacked about how much of an impact Maloney had been making in the academy.
To me, yeah.
I've been hearing loads of good reports about Sean Maloney. Next thing you know, he's the guy on the training pitch. You know, he's your Robbo or your Wally, Walford, and Martin O'Neill's back. And, you know, he's a 73-year-old in an Adidas tracksuit, and we'll forgive him for that. He's class in the press conferences. O'Neill is back. At what point does he stay as the manager for you, Paddy? What is the circumstance where we don't bring anybody in between now and the end of the season and Martin O'Neill's the manager?
So we take it if the results keep coming. At the end of the day, it's a result-driven business, like Martin O'Neill keeps saying. I thought Martin O'Neill's been brought in to pacify the fans. Right, that's my opinion on it. He's been brought in as a face that everybody knows. Martin will get them back on side. And let's face it, I've bought into it. Like, you see him walking out there in the trackie that they couldn't sell.
Build them back, right?
I know,
Don't look directly at the superstore.
I know, that's it.
You bought one, eh?
They bought it yet. I'm close. But he comes out wearing the wee green trackie that nobody's bought.
It'll look good, eh?
It's Martin of old, and he's seen his wee jumps against Falkirk as well. He's not quite got the height that he used to have, but
Here a World Cup's on with the tongues folded. No.
mate, it's brilliant, isn't it? I totally bought in, and he's come in to get the fans back on side, and I think he has in a way. Now Martin comes out and says, I don't take much to do with the coaching side of it and the other side of it. His interviews are brilliant. He's class, he's funny, he's still got it. Even Callum McGregor came out and says, listen, he's as sharp as attack. He's still there, he's still got all of that. So I think Sean Maloney's doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, obviously. And your man Fozzie, who we keep saying he's bringing the intensity, he's bringing everything else. That guy's brilliant. You watch his interviews as well, and he just seems like the kind of guy that you want to work for, you want to push for. That desire that we had lost, you look at somebody like Callum McGregor, who again has been off the boil.
Aye.
Sunday there, Callum was phenomenal. Callum was absolutely fantastic. I believe he was your man of the match, Steve, wasn't he?
He was for me. Yep.
So you look at players like that, and under this management team, they've managed to get the best out of a lot of these players who were getting paired to Honda Civics. Now we're in a Honda Type R. Do you know what I mean? We're actually going for it.
So,
aye, so we're going for it, and I'd love to see Martin stay until at least January, until we can get in, obviously, somebody else.
See, when I look at the modern day football, and there's been a lot of changes, and a massive part of that is data analytics, which I think has to be welcomed as a tool. Martin O'Neill has often cited it as a waste of time.
Aye, absolutely.
When he's a pundit, obviously, over the last 6 years. I don't think that comes into it, but what I'm going to say here is there's an old school vibe to what's happened in the last week, right? And when you've got a group of really good footballers, sometimes you've got to let them express themselves, and you've got to give them a bit of trust and responsibility. Is there such a thing in the modern game, Steve-O, where someone is overcoached and the game plan is more important than the player?
Yep, absolutely. You know, XG analysis, it forms all part of the modern game. But yeah, there's sometimes you just allowing players to be expressive. Now, we spoke to Didi Gap before. We were at a night with John Hartson, brilliant. And both those players have said to us, Martin O'Neill doesn't coach you within an inch of your life. He just says, these are your strengths. This is what I expect you to do. Go and play your game. So there's an element of autonomy and freedom to the guys to play. Obviously, you know what your system is and you know the work you need to do, but allow you to express yourself. And I think that's good. When you speak about where we're at, Paddy says Martin O'Neill's brought in to appease the fans. I think it's twofold. One, they needed a figurehead, because let's be honest, if it was going to be Sean Maloney, no one is going to accept that, right? No one's going to accept that. But also, one, it appeases the fans, but two, that combination of old, proven, with the track record and the new modern thinking, I think it's a good blend. Because even just putting Maloney in with other people around him, I still don't think the players would have the buy into him as a coach, a credibility level. But when you put a figurehead in front of him, it blends well. You've got the guy that's going to tell you how it is. He's going to lay it out, you know, on no uncertain terms. That's Martin O'Neill. But then you're going to have the guy that maybe the modern way of thinking, the players will like that, the intensity, guys like Fozzie. So I think personally, in terms of landing on our feet, and that is maybe just Celtic being lucky again, it's probably the best temporary coaching combination that we could have.
I'm thinking of other figures. I can't think of another figure.
Let's be honest, it's Gordon Strachan on it probably.
Probably the only one.
That's the only other one.
Only other person.
And nobody's taking that either.
No. And you know, the other thing I was going to say is, Martin O'Neill, take him out of the equation, a managerial team, a setup of Strachan, Maloney and McManus, you imagine the uproar.
Aye.
You bring in Martin O'Neill and that whole conversation's not even been had.
It appeases it.
It totally does.
You listen to Callum Osmond as well, and he talks about Martin O'Neill, and he says, Martin came in and he said he had watched me play and he was very impressed with how I played, and that he'd be willing to give me a chance and stuff. And listen, see, even if he hasn't, and somebody like that comes up and says that to you, that's that boost, that's that confidence that wee guy needed, and it showed.
It definitely did. You know, when I look at Martin O'Neill, my take on this, Paddy, I asked you, you know, what's the circumstances of him staying? You're right, it's results, right?
Yeah.
I think he stays until we find the right candidate. Let's not make any rash decisions.
Can't do it.
But then I think there's another question on the back of that. What do you do with Martin next? Because I don't think he walks away into the sunset and comes to Barazat and Design once a year and does an audience with me. He's got more to offer than that, isn't he?
I mean, I think when you look at it, I get this feeling, it remains to be seen. And of course, when the changes have to happen, come in, we will, as part of the collective and fan base, we'll decide if we think it's enough or we want more, right? All the rumours are swirling, new chairperson, new CEO, right? That's, as you know, and then eventually there'll be a new manager and there'll be a new backroom staff because there's been a clean out, right? It's going to be changes, whether they're good, positive or otherwise, in the academy, and then the word is Maloney is supposed to be something back into pathways. So if there's going to be changes at all different levels there, I think that this could be a precursor for Martin O'Neill to move upstairs into a director of football and or sort of all seeing eye overlooking it. And I don't think that's a good thing, because if you've got him and you've got Maloney having that combination that they've got right now, that working relationship, If you've got the guy that's overseeing the first team, but he's got a tap directly into what's happening in the youth, that could probably only be beneficial. Whether they do it or not, whether he wants to do it at 73, maybe 74, whatever time it comes around, remains to be seen. But I'd like to keep him about.
Yeah, you see what you said there about the boardroom. I mentioned this on ACSOM. Somebody in the comment section spoke about a different approach to the board, so that every figure on that board is the head of a department. So they're actually feeding something into the boardroom rather than just turning up, you know.
Aye, responsibility.
Exactly. And if Matt O'Neill's that man for the football department and he's the director of football, if you like, I'm all for that, Paddy. I could live with that.
Yeah, totally. We spoke about it before, the people, the resources that we've got as shareholders and at Celtic, like the hotel guys and obviously your accountants and whatever else, right? But who's the main football guy in there? I mean, you didn't have that. It's missing. We're a football club. You know what I mean? Yes, we are run very, very well as a business. I want to run very well as a football team. I want somebody in there to oversee that. Like you said, having Martin O'Neill in there, 73 years old or not, he's got an eye for talent. He's got an eye for knowing what you need in that squad.
Where does that put Tisdale though? That's another question.
He's really been mentioned, eh?
Yep.
You know what, last week, he's really
He's
been
been
mentioned.
we're bypassing him as a guy that should be featuring, that does he, in a new regime?
I know.
Feature.
Well, remember all the discussions as to who brought him to the football club? And then people were saying he's definitely a Brendan Rodgers guy. Well, the question was raised at that meeting with the CEO and the CFO whether or not he was a Dermot Desmond guy, and they didn't give a good answer. They really didn't give a good answer. The rumour that was swirling around, I hadn't heard this, is that Dermot Desmond had met him at some kind of a golf event.
Golf of it.
Doesn't seem
Right.
yeah.
And although Tisdale and Rodgers did know each other, it was Dermot Desmond's appointment. So that was the rumour, and that's why this question was asked.
Yeah.
See, when they come in, right, I had asked Steve, what do you know about this guy? What's he going to bring? Steve was, Ollie Watkins was a winger. This guy identified him as
It's
a
kind of
striker.
bad though that
Things
that's
like
one
that.
go-to
And
thing.
this,
You know,
this,
isn't it,
was,
wasn't
this
it?
was the kind of one, and I was like, well, what a striker Ollie Watkins is. He's identified that. Somebody that's a winger, no, put him in there. I thought maybe he'll come in here and have a wee look at our squad and go, yep, get him in there, boom, boom, boom. Manoeuvre things about, total new team, perfect. I mean, horses for courses, things like that, get the players in there. What have we seen from him? Nothing.
Still confused about it. To be honest.
Absolutely.
And he's still part of the team.
Stealing away.
So if he's the guy that apparently is the talent spotter, that's a game, they broke down how this works. He's a talent spotter. He identifies a talent. Brendan Rodgers rubber stamps every single signing. So they're adamant on that, right? Tisdale identified Engels, your favourite. He identified Ida, he identified Trusty, he identified Osmond. You know, so if that's the case, is it the identification's maybe right, the utilisation of that player is maybe wrong? I mean, we're only asking it now because
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Right? As you just said there, and you've mentioned, there's been changes in guys that have been brought in. So maybe it just is, whether people want to say it or not. Maybe it's their elite manager that we had refuses to be flexible.
yeah, I know. And again, people are now talking about similar issues when he was at Liverpool, and that's all coming to the fore. So Matt O'Neill and Sean Maloney are in charge at the moment, and let's keep that bounce is the way that I'm looking at it.
Yeah, definitely.
Dermot Desmond comes out with a flamethrower. That was the biggest part of Monday night that I don't know if you got the sense that I was kind of raging with that. I was. I thought it was really bad. There's another school of thought that it was a kind of strokey genius. It's actually unified the football club in a strange way. Don't know if that's by luck or design. But Lawrence Conley on ACSOM keeps saying to me, Dermot Desmond's good at picking managers. You know, it's him that brought Martin in first time. It's him that brought Brendan in. He brought Neil Lennon the second time, at least, maybe the first time. Gordon Strachan has got his dibs on it as well. Maybe he's good. Maybe he's the guy we can trust. My take on that, though, is at this stage of the game, you know, the Brendan Rodgers thing, he went back to the well with Brendan. He's gone back to the well with Martin O'Neill. Does he know the here and now? Does he have his finger on the pulse?
To be honest with you,
Shouldn't he be doing it, by the way? I think we all agree with that, but he will.
he should be. The reality is, do I think? No, I don't. He's what I even describe as a football man. No, but there's no doubt he'll be a Celtic supporter. Of course he will, right? But is his love for? Is he more Gareth Bale? Golf's his first love. Football's a distraction. That's the way it maybe seems. So, how much does it? I mean, he's barely at Celtic Park. So, how much football is he really watching elsewhere? That's what I'm at with it. Does he have his finger on the pulse? No, he doesn't. I think he probably gets people put to him, and then he'll say, I'll interview him as we heard with Ange Postecoglou. I'll let you cut your job. Right, somebody phone you back.
Yep.
I think he's basically given a presentation and he decides elsewhere. Other than that, it's names out a phone book.
Yeah, because he'll have some network, so people that he trusts will be feeding him information. This is the next big thing. This Brendan Rodgers guy, he's the guy to go for, and then he has the idea himself, and it becomes his idea because he's so powerful. If it is down to him, and we all know the power that he's got at Celtic, what type of a manager, Paddy, is Dermot Desmond looking at right now? Because I don't think he's looking at emerging talents. Like you say,
Yep.
he didn't know who Ange was until it was presented to him. He's not going to be scouring Europe looking for talent. He's going to be going for a certain profile, isn't he?
The cheap option, probably. You know what he's like. For me, we need somebody in there who's going to be forward thinking, somebody who's going to make it progress, somebody who's going to not play the way Brendan had us playing with the kind of triangle of death or the horseshoe of death, whatever you want to call it, this kind of back passing stuff and possession-based football. Yes, we're going to get that with some sort of manager, but for me, it needs to be a kind of up-and-coming prospect, basically. Somebody who is doing well in the game, who, regardless of what league they're at, is getting results. You can talk about percentages and you can talk about statistics and whatever. I base things on my eyes. I base things on what I can see. Not YouTube clips, because listen, I could look good in YouTube, but you base it on what you can see. And for me, looking at that, I'm wanting somebody who has got teams playing constantly in Europe, constantly at the top of the game and winning the leagues where they are. Well, that's what Dermot's looking at. I don't know.
Some of my concerns is the guys that are doing well in Europe, it's the system as much as the individual.
Yes.
And you then think, well, what system do we have, and does that manager fit our system? Are we capable and willing to change our system to suit the manager? Because I want to get to a point where we've got the system, Steve-O,
Yep.
and that system's going to work no matter what, and the manager's just a wee pawn in that system. We're no there. We're nowhere near that. Every time somebody new comes in, the whole thing changes. So you've got the Brendan Rodgers approach versus the Ange approach versus the Lenny approach. We don't have a system that you then fit the manager into. It's the other way around at the moment, isn't it?
Aye, we very much, again, cliche, horses for courses.
Yeah.
Celtic, what we've done in the past couple of managers is you have bought players that are theoretically tailored to their one way of playing.
Yeah.
My biggest concern with Ange Postecoglou, now, it worked out not too bad, obviously, as we all know, but after the Leicester, I thought he's bought all these guys that are going to play one specific way. How are they going to adapt to possession-based football under Brendan Rodgers? And then you get in what you perceive to be his signings to play that. Half of them don't even play, which is the funny thing, right? But yeah, we've always seemed to buy players to just play to the manager's whim. Now, you might say, well, that's the obvious thing, you need to do that. But there also needs a wee bit of flexibility. They can't just be that rigid, because as we've just seen here with Brendan Rodgers, you never know what's going to happen. You could go on a horrible run, get sacked. You could go offer a bigger job and see you later, I'm up the road, and your other manager comes in and they've got to find a way to try and adapt and make it work, which isn't ideal. So having a sort of generalised, this is the type of players, this is the form what to do, and having guys that can do it, but also having at the back of that guys who allow you different formations, different styles. That's more what that's what we need to be doing.
Aye, without a doubt. I'm going to start the first section then of candidates. We're spoken about Mark O'Neill and Maloney. They've got the reins at the moment. How long will that last? I'm not so sure. I'm going to start off with people already with a link to Celtic Football Club, right? And in no particular order, Ange Postecoglou is the first one I'm going to mention, right? So we do have a habit of going back to the well.
Yes.
Do we do it again with Ange? Is that ship sailed?
I think the ship's sailed. Listen, Ange got a £7 million payout or there or thereabouts. I don't exactly know how much it was. So does he want to go straight back into a position?
Was that from Forest or Spurs?
Well, exactly.
So he's walking about with at least a 10 million bounty at the moment, isn't
You
it?
would think so.
It's
It's a decent bit of cash. So listen, again, does he want to be spending that time with his family, or does he want to be going back to a team that he loved, that he done well at? I don't think he does. For me, we spoke about the way Ange plays, and he was found out down south. He really was. Ange had a plan A. Plan A was brilliant. If plan A worked, excellent. Plan B was do plan A better. That's simply Ange's philosophy. Try and score more goals in the opposition. Doesn't matter what we do at the back, just keep going. Didn't work in the Premier League because it's a lot more competitive than what it is up in Scotland. What we need is a manager who can come in, can handle. Celtic jerseys don't shrink to fit inferior players. They certainly don't shrink to fit inferior managers. If you can't handle the pressure of controlling a club like Celtic, then we don't bring somebody in. We need somebody with that mindset, somebody that's willing to come in here and understand that you can't lose a game. Celtic fans expect you to win every single week. It doesn't matter who you're playing. We could be playing Barcelona. I expect us to go out there and perform. Maybe not win the game. I expect us to give them a good game. And that's the thing. That's that pressure. We need a manager to come in with the mindset that, yeah, I can take that on. I can do that. And I think that's where we're going to struggle.
Yeah. What about Ange? I loved Ange. I did. You know, if he was announced tomorrow, guys, come on, we'd all be happy. But I don't think it's an ideal candidate for me.
No, you know, I'm kind of split between it. The key point for me is continuing going back to the well, as you say. That's the biggest thing. Certain circumstances, if again he was to come back, I imagine that he's probably going to want change. And this comes back to what we just spoke there at the top of the show. If there's going to be wholesale, genuine, meaningful change in various facets of the club, that might coax somebody like, and I'd say coax, it might encourage them, make it more appealing. I think if it was just as it is right now, does he come back? No, he doesn't. But again, would he want to come back to it? I don't know what the sort of background. Everybody seems to think they left on great terms. Maybe he did. And maybe that would be an option. But
there was no statement for Desmond, was there?
No, there was nothing. So would I be completely against it? If it was typical Celtic and it's but we fell on your door, I'd be like, right, okay, I'd rather something different that we've not seen before, but it could be worse. But I don't want to settle for it could be worse.
Yeah, I know. And again, it doesn't look as though we're doing our job as a club when it comes to recruitment. We're just going back to somebody that we already know.
Yep.
Other names mentioned, I'm throwing it in because it has been mentioned, ex-player for a very short period of time, Craig Bellamy, is now the manager at Wales. Now, you've been doing your research on Bellers. I've spoken to people that know him, and they said months and months ago, in fact, I think the conversation happened when he was at Burnley. This is a guy Celtic should be keeping tabs on. Right? He then gets the Wales job. And over to you, Steve-o, what's your take on Bellers?
So, straight out, I'll mention when we talk through certain names, one thing that I don't want is a name value ex-player. Now, I'm just using it as an example. Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Thiago Motta, Craig Bellamy. I don't want a ex-player with a big reputation, name value player, manager coming in. The ones that are very successful are out of Celtic's reach, right? So let's bring it back to basics that we're talking about. Bellamy, I can't understand, if I'm being totally frank with you. I watched them, they're doing all right, and as you say, he's got decent Anderlecht, Cardiff Academy, assistant at Burnley. He's done well, he's been around some good clubs, and he'll have a wealth of knowledge. He goes into the international scene. So far, 14 games, 6 wins, 4 draws and 4 losses. Now, I'm very sorry to burst some people's bubble. No matter how nice his football might look or how he comes across, how he presents, that is ever a rookie manager who's seen it. Now, Celtic fans are slagging off Danny Rowe with his CV. Admittedly, he's probably got a better assistant track record than Bellamy, and he's got more games under his belt as an actual manager. See, if Bellamy was getting liked by Rangers, we would be rolling about laughing. That's the reality of it. So in my head, I cannot get my head around why folk are so excited about Craig Bellamy. Maybe in a couple of years, once he's been at a couple of clubs, yes, that might be too late. But at this moment in time, that's as big a gamble as Rangers bring in Steven Gerrard at the front end.
I agree with you. I agree with that. It's a huge gamble. And again, you're going for profile. We don't need to go for profile, do we?
No.
It needs to be somebody who's going to fit where we are right now. And I think there's going to be big changes at the club, like you say, Steve, and partly forced by the collective action of Celtic supporters. Partly, I think, forced by the fact that Dermot Desmond came in, had a look under the bumper and thought, what's going on? What is going on here? I've left you to run this, and this is where we're at. So Craig Bellamy loved him as a player, absolutely loved him as a player. Let him go and develop. He's not ready for Celtic, is he?
No, he's definitely not. And listen, how do you follow what Steve says there? He highlights pretty much everything. Bellamy, for me, listen, he's a guy who was out in Santa Ponsa doing the rounds of the pubs about a year ago. Do you know what I mean? He's not the kind of guy who, for me, has the stature to come in and run a club like Celtic. He really doesn't. Up and coming, possibly. He's doing okay with Wales.
Is he combustible though? Is he like Neil Lennon combustible?
Well, there would be a suggestion as a player. I've not seen that yet in the managerial realms. But yeah, what are you actually bringing into the football club, Steve? I mean, we've just got rid of the biggest drama. This is a big thing with Brendan. I love Brendan, but by God, there's always drama.
Yeah.
We don't need that, do we? No. We really don't need any dramas.
No, you don't. You need somebody, like I say, somebody who can come in and shoulder the stature of Celtic, because this is a big job. Whether people like to admit that or not, this is a massive, massive job, and we need the right appointment for it. And for me, Bellamy's just not that man.
No, it is a huge job, and you know, every time this happens, you get detractors, don't you?
Yeah.
Who don't really follow Scottish football, who don't appreciate the size of the club.
Yep.
I do think we could attract big names, but not just for the sake of attracting a big name. There's no reason for this. The next one is controversial, and it's controversial because he managed in Israel. He went over and took the coin from Maccabi Tel Aviv, and for that reason, a huge amount of Celtic fans are saying, don't even go anywhere near Robbie Keane. And Robbie Keane, of course, ex-player, and in the kind of mould of Bellamy, came in for a wee while, scored a few goals. Robbie Keane as a player, loved him for Ireland, of course. He was outstanding. This has sullied his reputation in the eyes of many Celtic fans. Steve was going to do a dive into, right, let's park that for the moment. Is he any good as a manager? Because he is one of the favourites. He's in the book.
And he's Irish, isn't it?
It's that kind of profile. And by the way, I don't know for a moment if the Israel thing's an issue for Dermot Desmond. I just don't. So I can't comment.
I don't think it would be. I think, listen, Robbie Keane's going to be one of the ones that's in Dermot's phone book. Like Steve will say, he's got the Irish contingent in
that
there.
seems to be a big tick for him, doesn't it, on his list?
That would be chaos. Can you imagine after that statement, Desmond just appointing somebody like Robbie Keane? That would be absolute chaos. It'd be like a bomb going off.
Yeah.
You know?
Celtic, you look at Celtic Park, the game that stood out for me was the Atletico Madrid game when we had the Palestine banners all the way around and stuff, and the flags everywhere. Can you imagine what Parkhead would be like the first game if he was in charge? To be protesting. It would be madness. It would be absolute carnage. But like you said, Steve-O has statistics. He has everything else.
Bit of a ball there, isn't I? No, like here's where I'm at with the manager, and I understand, right? People talk about where he's been and what he's managed, and listen, I totally understand that. I do agree it's probably going to be controversial. It would create issues. Of course it would. Do I think that it would be something that would necessarily affect him as a guy coming in? I don't think so. When I look across him, on paper, it's out of all the ridiculous ones that are out there, from a simply footballing standpoint and results, he looks acceptable. That's what I would say. Not ideal, but acceptable. So I had a wee look. Ferencváros, 47 games, 28 wins, 11 draws, 8 losses. Scored 116 goals, conceded 57. Decent going. Europa League, 7 games, 4 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses. You know, so there you go. Maccabi Tel Aviv, won the league, won the cup. Again, 53 games, 38 wins, 9 losses, 6 draws. Scored 113, conceded 49. You know, on paper, here we go. Conference League, 6 wins, no draws, 2 losses over 8 games, with a heavy outscoring again. On paper, he looks like he plays decent football, and he's been at 2 teams and he's got decent results. So from a simple numbers, not where he's managed, who he's managed, from the numbers of all the names that are swimming about, he's right down there, because I don't want a name. Forget where he's managed, forget who he's managed. I just don't want a figurehead ex-player sideshow. That's why Robbie Keane's in the bin for me above all. But yes, it would cause obvious issues about moral compass and things like that. And of course, as we know, the current standpoint of the Celtic fans, when it comes to these things, I try to split I split political views and everything else, and I look just simply through footballing eyes. If a player was going to be touted to come to Celtic, and let's just say the 4 or 5 seasons that top scorer in the league, would I not want to sign him because he once previously played in Israel? If I'm being honest, I would look at what he's going to bring to the team. That needs to be paramount, but I can understand why that would come with its own problems, and I don't think it's smoke that Celtic want. But the question is, would the ignorance or the arrogance, or whatever term you want to put on it, off a Dermot Desmond just take all that aside?
Would he take it into consideration? I hope he would take that into consideration, because we're talking about unity, togetherness. What Martin O'Neill's brought, the effect of Martin O'Neill.
You're an ex-Rangers manager.
I know.
Would you do that and all? Like, cool, no, clearly you wouldn't. Aye.
This is the thing, and it would almost just like tear all that up, because I think unity is what everybody wants.
Yeah.
Unity was the biggest part of the Celtic fans collective that impressed me. The fact that everybody came together, regardless of what they agreed on or disagreed on. They wanted the best for Celtic. And that unification, I felt that in the last 7 days through Martin O'Neill.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, the 73-year-old in a tracksuit's done that for me. And I think, regardless of how megalomaniac anybody is, that would be a very difficult decision for anybody to make if they thought that was a good idea.
It's a hard sell, isn't it?
It's
hard
hard to
to-
say, like, when you're talking about bringing in an Israeli player and stuff like that, or a player who's played in Israel, if you think back to Leila Bada in his prime, would you take him? Of course you would. That's a player that you would bring in an absolute heartbeat. Guys like Near Beaton and whatever obviously come in and done a fantastic job for us. But when you look at Robbie Keane there, like I said before we started, you can talk about statistics, you can talk about like games and whatever. Ferencváros are playing good football. Like I've not seen millions of games. I've watched highlights of some of their games and stuff, and they're playing decent enough football. So things like that is where it's going to be kind of looked at. Do I think Robbie Keane is going to be the man for that? I think it's a tough one, and I think it'll cause a lot of uproar if it is.
I mean, where is that as well? When you just briefly scan over those stats again and results, he's still at an early stage. 2 clubs, he's still at an early stage, right? At this moment in time, would that ever change over time, that feeling groundswell among Celtic supporters? I don't think it would, right? So you've just got to take that as you find it. 5, 6, 7 years down the line, when he's maybe been at different clubs, would that in situations, hopefully in the world, are in a better place than they are right now, maybe different. But at this moment in time, as I said, it's smoke that Celtic shouldn't want.
Here's a question for you, right? So Dermot Desmond's in the boardroom and he's got his list. And on the top of that list, let's say it's Robbie Keane. Is anybody strong enough in that boardroom to say, Dermot, this isn't a good idea and this is the reason why?
Well, you were at the collective meeting and I had spoken to you after it, and you told me, you didn't mention the name, I won't mention the names, but there was some people in there who seemed a little spineless, shall we say. Now, I don't think there's anyone in there with the courage or anything to stand up to a man like Dermot Desmond and say, I don't think he's going to be the right choice. If he comes in and sits that in front of me and goes, look at that record, boys, that's our man. Oh, that's a great shite, Mr. Desmond. Well done, sir. Another cup of tea?
Custard cream.
Custard cream? Aye. You know what I mean? So
Any fan in that room would say, oh, she would. You really need to consider this.
The thing is, I've said earlier on, I try to split the two, but unfortunately this is one big massive elephant in the room in terms of that, and that's what you've got to think of, how that's going to manifest itself. So as much as I like to try and look at a linear fashion based on results and what they've done over anything else, backdrop, who they've managed, where they've managed, this one is completely unavoidable. There's no way button that up. There's no way button it, and it instantly makes that tenure turmoil from the off when you're trying to settle down and pick up a season.
at 12-1, you don't think he's a good bet, Steve? Was that?
I think at 12-1 it's not a good bet. Yes, I would not put my money on it.
You would hope that he was thinking of Roy Keane, and then that brings its own trouble.
Oh, come on.
Right? Damien Duff is the next name on the list. But it's almost as if he's been coupled in with Robbie Keane.
He's Irish and all, isn't he?
Yeah.
Aye.
You see what's Boston. Highly thought of and highly regarded as a coach at Celtic. A player that, many, many times I would have loved to have seen him signing for Celtic.
Yeah.
Apparently there was an opportunity at one point near the end of his career. Didn't happen. I'm just thinking Dermot Desmond, thinking here. Is he anywhere in the equation? Would you just be better keeping somebody like Sean Maloney?
Aye.
As a coach?
For me, sometimes it's better the devil you know.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at what Sean Maloney and Martin O'Neill are doing there, bringing in somebody like Damien Duff for me is a step back for that. I couldn't even tell you what he's doing. Do you know what I mean? He's not somebody that I've kept tabs with. What you see as a player and stuff like that, you looked at his career, kind of Blackburn and things like that, incredible. But nah, he's not one that I would even put on the radar, if I'm being honest. He's not.
I think he's a guy that you look at him as, I know that he wants to be a manager in his own right, cares what he's doing. If you're talking about bringing back in a coaching capacity or as part of a new, revolutionised setup behind the scenes, aye. As a standalone manager, no, again, too early, small sample size, like Bellamy, to an extent, as we've discussed, Keane, potential there shown, but too early. As you said, right at the top, we need to make sure they get this right, and we can't do speculative punts because of name value or what we kind of know. They were a good coach. Doesn't translate to be a manager, particularly a manager at Celtic.
No, I agree with that. Talk about on the radar, somebody who definitely appears to be on the radar is Kieran McKenna. His name continually being linked to Celtic.
He's Irish and all.
Town. There's another thing. So he is. Kieran.
So a running joke,
I know. I mean, all I can do in scenarios like this, as much as everybody else looking at records and stuff, is ask people that maybe have been in the game and might have worked with him.
Yes.
And I didn't get a good report about Kent McKenna, even though he's really highly regarded elsewhere. I didn't get a good report about McKenna. So, young manager, seems to be favoured by a lot. It's going to be expensive if we bring him in, Paddy, because obviously he's under contract. What do you think?
See, for me, the price tag automatically just puts a nail in that one straight away. What is it expected to be? Something around about 5 million or something like that? I've seen touted somewhere. Again, an up-and-coming manager, someone who's doing well wherever you read. Like you say, you've heard otherwise, certain things that people have worked under him. But again, he's done well. He's won big leagues. He's won challenging leagues. He's got the stature there. He's got a good understanding of the game. But I think it's a bit too much for somebody like him. Again, it's okay doing something down south in the Championship or League One or wherever you are. Celtic's a different animal. You're down there, and we speak about young guys like Mikey Johnson going to a team like West Brom where he's not expected to win every single week. Unplayable. Absolutely brilliant player. Look at him at Celtic. Really, really struggled because of that expectation. Now that expectation passes on to a manager, and a lot of people won't deal with that. Would I expect him to be able to come up here and deal with that? Not at this stage in his career. I think he's done well, but again, a little bit too soon.
You know, a name that keeps coming back to me, guys, is Ronnie Dyler, because he was a wee bit left field at the time, as was Ange. He was something that, if it works, you're an absolute genius, right? But he spoke, after being at Celtic for 2 years, about the pressure and how difficult it was for somebody to come in who's not worked under that kind of pressure before, and the expectation level's so high. I do get that. I know that, you know, there's Man United and all that with McKenna, but to come in as a manager of Celtic, that level of expectation, you know, it can chew you up and spit you out.
Well, he's already under pressure at the moment in Ipswich based on his spend. So again, having a quick look, as you mentioned, youth system, Spurs, he was at Leicester, Vancouver, you know, Man United, he was assistant manager at the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, then he goes to where he is right now, Ipswich in his own right. 2 promotions, you said, League One to Championship, difficult. Championship to Premier League, difficult. So he's got that there. LMA manager, players, Championship manager, 2 awards. So he's obviously doing well at this, but again, as difficult as those leagues are, the expectations is different. Now, when I had a wee look through him, he's been at them since 2021-22 season, then they get promoted. So between 21-22, 23, 22-23, 23-24, they've spent the bones, his club, Ipswich, under 10 million quid or thereabouts, right? With about 3 million coming in the door. Now, you can argue and say, brilliant on a tight budget to get into Premier League. But see, after that, 24-25, £135 million, and this season, £52 million. 196 or thereabout £1 million he spent, and they're sitting currently with 19 points, 9th in the league, and fans are in uproar because of the spend, because of the failures of the Premier League and coming down. So again, there's pros and there's cons. Up and coming, the promotions are tough, works on a limited budget, or had, but then no European pedigree, different gravy, the pressures. And then, of course, I think he likely moves quickly as well. That's another factor we've got to think about. Because he's coming up from down south, having been Premier League, if he came and done a Brendan Rodgers 1 season, 2 season, he's away before you know it as well. So if you're looking, it needs to be a balance act, the right candidate, but you want a wee bit of stability.
I find that really interesting. I find it interesting that he was able to operate with a slim budget, but with that spending, I mean, he could empty a bank with that kind of spending. And that would take some doing because we don't spend money. By the way, big shout out to you guys for doing that video at the stadium before I come to you on McKenna. And obviously we see the new decal. Even though it could be better, it's better than what we had, right?
Nice.
Better than what we had. Are they listening to fans, or was it already on the agenda?
I don't know, we said we'd like to see players of the old and any iconic moments. I mean, that's almost, I'm not listening, let's not kid ourselves on. I would be surprised if anybody in that boardroom seen that video. That's just where I'm at with it, right? But people are sort of saying, "Oh, well done," but
They do mention supporters as well, though.
yeah,
You know, that was the bit in the kind of press release that I looked at. I goes, maybe they are listening. Maybe they are listening. Or it could well be that somebody within the club has basically claimed the idea as their own. Shouldn't we do this? Because a lot of that happens as well, right? So what's your take, Paddy, on Kieran McKenna? I mean, see, reading into it the way that Steve-O has done, I could see it working. Even though I've spoke to someone who knows him in the game and says, no, it's not for me. I could see that working for Celtic.
Working on a tight budget, let's face it, that's kind of roughly what he's going to have at Celtic.
that's good and bad, isn't it? But
Of course it is. Right, if he's going to come in here and, like we said, you look at it, he's won the League One, he's won the Championship, he's been manager of the year, he's done well. Yeah, excellent candidate. Coming into Celtic and being given, I don't know how much he's going to be given. Say he comes in January, right? And they say, right, January transfer window, there's 20 million, go strengthen this squad. Will he have the ability to then strengthen that squad and
what
push?
kind of markets is he going to go as well, though?
Exactly.
You know, very English-centric sort of leagues,
Yeah.
like Brendan Rodgers like to do, and that comes with a bit of money. So,
We've done really well from that, though. When you think back to the players that we signed from League One and Championship and whoever, I mean, you can look back to guys like that, guys like Gary Hooper and whoever, do you know what I mean? You can see these guys coming back in, and we've done really, really well from that kind of market. Even look at the kind of Martin O'Neill team from like 2003, 2004, kind of that era.
Is he worth 5 million? Well, that's the big question.
That's the question.
As well.
And are Celtic willing to go out and pay that? Does that come off his transfer budget? Does that come in? Do you know what I mean?
No, he shouldn't. Of course it shouldn't. Remember, McCann used to charge you for the jerseys. That, you know, Andy Walker got charged £55 for the jersey as he
I
said.
don't send him over.
But again, we've saved a few quid on Brendan Rodgers walking, so we could throw that in the pot. And in fact, I don't think we've spent the 9 million we got from first time round either.
You know, the formula of these managers that we spoke about so far, and probably some of the others we'll talk. See, when you look at all these guys, they all play similar formations, similar styles.
Yes.
4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, that tends to be the guys that we're looking at. There's a relative profile or style that we're looking at. Again, looking at McKenna, his team's at Ipswich, 186 games, 87 wins, 49 draws, 50 losses, right? Take his fine. Bear in mind they were in the Premier League at one point. 335 scored goals and 237 against. Goals, attacking, trying to do the right things. Of course, right now at this moment in time, they're more on in ninth, but and there's a wee bit of pressure coming down his neck. But there seems to be a common theme running through the guys, at least in terms of style of play.
Yeah, and again, it's important. People in time go back and think nostalgically about Gordon Strachan.
Yeah.
But in terms of a style of play, it wasn't a typical Celtic style of play. It really wasn't. He got results, but it wasn't great at times to watch. The Brendan Rodgers thing, how often was his team no great to watch? So I think style's important. And it leads us on then. So where is he in the great scheme? Is he, would you say if we split this into a Europa League, is he in the top section, middle or bottom section for you?
For me, I'd say he'd be in the top. He'd be up there just based on what he's achieved down south. And the reason that I wouldn't say yes instantly is because obviously he's never really worked under that sort of pressure. The fact that you need to win every single game.
I think he's probably, for me, I'd say he's got to be up the top end, but then when you really look through a lot of the names, none of them are bowling me over. That'll be a recurrent theme when you ask me about some of the remaining guys. There's lots of positives there, but there's nobody that I went, has to be them. Nobody that I've really pinned my colours to the mast and goes, that's it.
That's interesting. How often do we have that though, as a Celtic fan? You know, we know the names because Zanj wasn't on my radar.
No, convenient. It's no difference. Get off the lead.
Moving on then, because there's a few people who are in jobs, and I found a very interesting point was made by Gordon Strachan. And I questioned this because Gordon Strachan, he might have just been giving his opinion, but it sounded as though he had some kind of a specialist knowledge that Celtic's target or targets were contracted till the end of December.
Like he had a boy working at the club.
Maybe even two. What gets me a wee bit about this, and I've got to say this, and it's not just low-hanging fruit or any of this kind of stuff. Dermot Desmond brings out this statement on Monday, which I didn't agree with, right? I didn't like the tone of it. I don't think that's how we should do business, right? But we've also got pundits who are managers of other teams in Scotland who are being paid by various broadcasters, and it's clear that they've got a pro-board agenda.
Definitely.
It's sitting there arguing with Chris Sutton and everything else. He should have no information about what's happening at Celtic.
No.
Yeah. Yes, he's an ex-player, and yes, he's an ex-manager. He's employed by Dunfermline Athletic as Neil Lennon. He shouldn't be getting any information in relation to what's happening at Celtic. And I am surmising that he did. Gordon Stratton might have been given the heads up by one of his two boys who are employed with the club, or maybe he's also within the realms of that clique where he's party to information. He shouldn't be. He's employed by Dundee.
Nope.
So these people shouldn't be party to what's going on at Celtic, I'm afraid. It doesn't matter how successful they were as ex-players or managers, Paddy.
I totally get it, mate, but listen, there's always going to be somebody in there who's going to leak something, and these guys, whether they've slipped up and went out and done that, or whether they're doing it to boost their own profile or whatever, again, it's something that, like you said, it should be in-house, should be kept in-house.
Do you think if let's just say the manager preferable candidate is going to be December, does that even, we've spoke about the club throwing things out there, could that have even been the likes of, you know, someone like board or Dermot Desmond put out the feeling on it? It's going to be December. Now we'll look at the candidates. If it's guys in the job, there's probably only two that fit that bill. One of them would get people excited. So is that maybe what they're trying to do? But then that comes with the consequence. If you don't get either one of those guys, you look a fool.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, maybe testing the water. We're maybe underestimating them a wee bit. And the two guys who have been quoted are Knutsen, who we know from Bodo Glimt, of course, and Nancy, who I thought was a little bit left field. I was looking there, and I'm not sure if he did manage Alistair Johnston in Montreal. He maybe did, but
I'm not sure. I know he was there. Certainly his column was screwing out.
Sure if they cross paths. But there's two names that have been thrown into the mix, and they're appearing on the leaderboard. Where are they for you, though, Steve?
So let's jump at the top with Knutsen, right? I think that's the one that, and again, I'm going to caveat, I've looked at it through facts and figures, and I know they don't tell the thing. I have been genuinely confused as to the clamour for Knutsen for as long as I can remember it, right? Now, I know they are out, Ange Ball, I get that, right? But I've my concerns. I can see all the positives, which I'm happy to do and talk through here. But the one thing that I cannot get away from Knutsen that comes down to it is the cons of, is he too comfortable? Does he in himself lack a level of ambition? Now, he's been at Bodo since 2018, 4 in a row champions up to the moment. You know, manager of the year times 3, brilliant. 421 games, 433 wins, 91 draws, 97 losses, right? It's good record. We know about what he's done in Europe and so on and so forth, right? But he's been there, he's got autonomy, he's allowed to do pretty much what he wants. See if they were to lose the league next season or didn't perform Europe, he's not going to lose his job, right? He's on to a good thing. And that's my biggest concern. He does everything right in terms of, we could talk about budgets, works well on a limited budget. Again, pro and a con. Style of play, yes, but is he too comfortable? Does he in himself lack ambition? And if he's that fantastic a manager, why has no one come in and prized him away? It says that his salary is about 850,000, right? But there's rumours, whether you believe it or not, that he'll get a cut on from selling on a players, identifying and selling on. Now, if that's true, that's a sweet, sweet situation to be in. Autonomy, left alone, do your own devices, and you're being successful. But Ajax came calling, didn't want to go anywhere near it. Does it translate? Is he in his own wee bubble where, as you're saying, the weight, the pressure, going into Celtic, if you don't hit the ground running and deliver for the off, I want a guy who's got the mentality. He's been a one-club man, essentially, and that does scare me a little bit. Maybe a bad comparison, but think of the situation with Davy Moyes at Everton. Now, it wasn't winning things like this, but secure, happy, fans playing a decent amount of football, decent level of football, nobody was complaining. He makes a step up, doesn't happen. So that's just drawing a comparison. That's my only worry about Knutsen. Because the football, the stats, the gameplay, everything is positive. But I can't get away from, you've been there since 2018, mate, and you've no moved on.
And how adaptable are we to someone's every whim? No, very. Because we do our own thing, don't we, when it comes to recruitment and development of players, etc. Paddy, he is a name that a lot of Celtic fans are kind of, I think, pining for in many ways. Because I think with Knutsen, what you get is you get someone who's operating in European football, in a European competition, and that's the level that we keep talking about. I had a big conversation recently about expectations of a typical Celtic fan and how they change with the changes at the club. 94, with Fergus coming on board. When did we become a fan base that expected something in Europe? Probably under Martin O'Neill. And then when did we become a fan base whose priority was Europe? Probably after Rangers died, right? Because when that happened, that parochial rivalry, yes, there is a new incumbent playing out at Ibrox. We get it, it's the local derby and everything else, but it's not the same for me. And also, we should be beating them because of the head start we've got on that club. Therefore, Europe is, for me, something that we need to focus on. And I think that type of manager is why, you know, we become excited when we're linked with a Knutsen. What's your take on it?
Listen, Knutsen was the one for me, I'd say, to Steve-O. After watching the game against Ange, when they out-Ange balled Ange, like Steve-O said, playing out for the back, I can't remember the name of the right back they had. Incredible that day, absolutely brilliant, just bombing up and down that wing, creating everything. They just basically, they played us off the park that day. I've watched a lot of their games, and that's the style of football I think Celtic should be playing. It's the Celtic way. They play attacking football. They can defend well. They're not passing the ball about in midfield, not really a lot possession based, but they drive forward, they push, and they go for results. Doesn't matter who they're playing. You can tell that by the results in Europe and stuff like that. Budget wise, I think you'll have a better budget at Celtic, you'll have better players. Like Steve-O says, the only thing I think that he lacks at the minute is the ambition. We need somebody with massive ambition. If he has the ambition to challenge at Champions League level, to push forward, then I think for me he would be the man. He would be the one that I would be most excited about coming in and doing a job, but only if he has the ambition that we have, and we need to get that across.
You've got to have that ambition, don't you? The other names on here are Wilfred Nancy and Nicky Hyan. And you've done a wee bit of looking and digging into them as well.
I think there's similarities. I think, see all the guys that we spoke about, don't misconstrue what I said. I think Knutsen is got to be the top, right, out of everybody that's out there. Not, it would be the cheap option because he's got out of contract, right? But I think he's a better option than McKenna, who's an expensive option and a risk. He does have pedigree, Knutsen, so I just want to make that abundantly clear. The budget's, just to touch on it real quickly, roughly 35 million he's brought in, and they've brought 67 million for out of the way. Now, wanting that tight budget's a good thing, but of course, can they bottle that magic and strike it at Celtic? Because once Celtic come calling, you don't get these guys that cheap. That's the difference. In terms of Nancy, a bit of an outsider for me. Falls into the up-and-comer sort of bracket. Again, I just had a look at it. Columbus Crew, Montreal, as you says. I'm concerned, too many losses and too many draws when I look at his matches. You know, he said 214 matches in total as a manager, 109 wins, 48 draws and 57 losses in a, let's be totally honest, relatively poorish league. Now, of course, he comes with the fact that he's won some trophies there, but let's have a look at it. He's not spent a lot either. Transfers in about 31 million, and transfers out about 20. So he's actually spent more than they've brought in. Again, that's just the nature of what you're dealing with.
That's a red flag for the Celtic board.
That for me there. MLS Cup, he's won that with them. He's been coach of the year, up and coming, 3-4-2-1 formation. Again, all the ideas, the DNA and wants to do it. But for me, it just seems like a punt. As I says, I know you've got to caveat it, you'd be in a better position in terms of finances and players that are available to you. But too many draws and too many losses in an average league for me. I think, again, scaling up from the MLS and firing you over here, it's night and day. It's literally like a different game, if we're being honest. So
I think it would be a huge risk.
Aye.
A huge risk. And if he was appointed, I would not be confident.
That's Ronnie Dyler type.
Yeah, aye, absolutely. Left field, aye, without a doubt. What about Nicky Hyan? And by the way, you've already stuck your colours to the mast. You're in for Knutsen.
I'm Knutsen camp.
If I'm saying the balance of what we discussed, for benefit of doubt, I am also in that camp. Despite my reservations, I'm here to be proven wrong. Everything on paper's brilliant for him. As I say, it's just nonsense. the fact he's been there for so long, never moved on, it just makes me a wee bit worried he's maybe so comfortable.
Yeah, I've got concerns as well that the stability that he has, and he's a part of a much bigger machine.
I mean, if he came to Celtic didn't work, he'd probably go straight back. But
Yeah, I know, he would. He'll be an absolute hero over there. What about Nicky Hine?
again, I'm not overly. I didn't do as, but I'll be honest, transparency, didn't do as much into looking at him. But again, it just seems it's a bit uninspiring. For me, it just is another situation where look at the names that we're discussing. There's guys that have got name value. There's guys that have got, like we've talked on, McKenna and Knutsen, that have got a bit of a track record, but nobody's blown you away. And he just fits into that same category for me. The idea that the principles of the style of football and things are there, but I'm just like, does that scale up to Celtic? At a time when we need to get it absolutely right, this is do or die stuff, this appointment. I just don't know. Like, I see how all the guys have spoke about it, he's literally, I'm just so on the fence. I'm like, I don't know. And I know that's boring view, but I just really don't know. I couldn't tell you.
When you spoke about it,
invested
says,
them in that.
where do you put these managers in sort of the league? He's at the bottom of it.
Right.
For me, he's one of these guys that, to be fair, I think the Celtic job's far too big for him. I really do. And like Steve says, other candidates, Knutsen, McKenna, guys like this, fit the bill.
They're higher in that list.
They're way up there.
Yeah.
And style up way wise.
I mean, do you personally, Paul John, do you see him as being in that punt bracket as well? Do you?
I would say so. I think my concerns around Knutsen is, would it work at Celtic?
Yes.
Celtic is not this machine that's just one part of. Every single time we bring in a manager, the whole system, in terms of recruitment, the whole system, the backroom staff, that's all going to change. Knutsen's coming from a club where he's part of the success. He's not the reason for it. And you're looking at some of these managers and you're thinking, you need somebody of a stature who's going to have that ambition, who has known success and they can deal with the demands. So, but at the same time, we only get that manager at a certain stage of their career. It needs to be on an upward trajectory. Can he have peaked or we'll never get them? No. That's where McKenna for me comes in a little bit. I think he's still on a trajectory. We might get him at the right time. There's been a wild card thrown out this week by Charlie Mulgrew. Charlie Mulgrew has thrown a wild card, right? Klopp has been part of the discussion.
Oh, come on.
Right. Are there any wild cards, gentlemen? Anybody you would throw into the mix?
Listen, I take Jurgen Klopp. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah, you would take him in a heartbeat. I think the wild card's Ange. I honestly do. I think Ange, because of what he's done. Yeah. Managing down in the Premiership, winning a European trophy. I don't think he's on our radar and we're on his.
No.
I heard one, Muscat. Is that a wild card?
I would say so, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you obviously the links with the other side of the city.
He'd be more popular than Robbie Keane.
He probably would. Funnily enough, he would,
They probably would, but listen, he's done well. Do you know what I mean? He's a good manager. He's got a proven track record. It would be a wild one, but there's more chance of that happening than I think there is with Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be pretty honest.
I mean, I probably agree. I do agree with that. The wildest of wild cards is the unlikely situation that we discussed at the start of the show. It's that Martin takes it. I mean, that is right. That is unthinkable. But no, we've spoke through the guys, and again, for me, I am not blown away with. Well, again, apart from Knutsen, I think, but I mean in terms of actual name value, I'm not like, oh my God, this is what I need. So probably, the wildest of the wild cards with Martin Neilstein on, but I don't think that's going to happen. It probably is the return of Ange. Nobody expects that. Looking at some of the other names we've just mentioned there, it ranges from speculative punts to guys that have a amount of experience but are still in finding their way mode. Knutsen's the outlier with stable background and track record. He is the outlier. So that's where he almost becomes the only option. And that gets into risky territory for me. I just don't want it to be something that we turn to a guy that's been out of... There is good managers that are out of job out there. Marco Rose would be one that would come up. But again, it will also beg the question, why is he out of a job?
Why is he out of a job? Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talk about it as well, Paul John. You said about McKenna's obviously going to cost us $5 million. Knutsen is going to be free in January. who are the board going to choose when it comes down to that, mate?
I know.
It's a no-brainer.
I know. It's going to be interesting. Will you come back for a part 2 once it's happened?
Well, I would
Definitely.
see if it were getting anything right here. Like, that's a problem.
Let's face it, do you think, what's the chances of it being nobody that we've discussed?
There is also that chance. There is also that chance. I remember when Martin O'Neill was announced, nobody expected it.
No.
I remember when Venglos was announced, even the players, you'll have heard Jackie telling the story.
Who, wasn't it?
Aye, and Jackie Mack and all the guys are in Brian Scott's physio room, and they're trying to figure out who the next manager would be, and they thought it might be Rutulit
Yeah.
at the time, and it was Dr. Joseph Venglos. So
But listen, thank you to Joseph for bringing us lovely me on my
I mean, just
he did a good signing
you
record.
don't mind to ask yourself. You always put us in the spot and says, who would be the number one? Who would be the candidate for you? All the guys that we've discussed today, if you were to say a top 3, right, a top 3, what would your top 3 be? And what would your 2 bottom in the bin? We know it's Robbie Keane's in the bin at the bottom, right?
He was in the bucket.
Aye, so
I'm going to, maybe unexpectedly, I'm going to say McKenna
Mhm.
would be up there as my first. If he
Yeah.
was announced, I would think that's a good move. Knutsen, my only concern is that he's part of a big success story. He's not the reason
Yeah.
for it. And are we adaptable enough as a football club for him to thrive?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the third choice, Martin O'Neill. Stick with Martin. Stick with him.
But the thing is, with other people coming in as well, and you talk about Knutsen coming in or McKenna coming in, whatever, they're going to be bringing backroom staff as well. They're going to want to bring their own team in. And if Knutsen's going to want to do that for Bodo Glimt, then that comes down to Bodo. Are they willing to let go pretty much everything that they've built over
okay,
the
they
last-
might have a succession. They might do what would be unfashionable for us and say, well, if he moves, who's his number 2? And they just step up and carry it
Exactly.
going.
Yeah, the system's working. You're in that Eddie Howe situation,
Yeah.
All
your
your
ex-Bond
boss of ex. Aye, absolutely backroom team. Listen, gentlemen, I really enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to the announcement wherever that happens. We look at these tremendous stickers. Where do we get these Celtic World Order stickers?
Anybody can just DM us. We'll get a vat of various different designs, and if you want them, give us a shout.
I've got the fridge magnet. Thanks for joining us
It's
again
always a pleasure.
on A
Thank you.
Celtic State of Mind.
Brilliant.
Thanks again for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind. Join us next week, Friday night at 6 o'clock, for This Is ACSOM.